Hello and welcome once again to Straight Bat, my weekly blog where, as the title suggests, I comment with a straight bat. Today I'm going to speak to you about the accidental Chief Minister. Now, you've heard of the accidental Prime Minister, i.e. Dr. Manmohan Singh, but who is the accidental Chief Minister? Now, in a period where the BJP has been on a triumphant election victory roll from one state to another, the only good news for the opposition has come from Maharashtra, where in the recent Legislative Council elections, the ruling Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi actually wrested 4 of the 6 seats from the BJP, including winning the prestigious Nagpur Graduates Constituency seat, a seat that they had never won for more than 50 years. Now, for a three-wheeler coalition government that many believe is on a ventilator almost on a week-to-week basis, these results do offer relief and resuscitation. More so for the Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, who has been almost written off from politics for the 2 decades that he's been in politics, but is proving to be a political survivor. And he, my friends, is my accidental Chief Minister. Let me tell you why. First of all, it can't be easy being the son, or dare I say the grandson, of Bal Thackeray, the Shiv Sena supremo, a domineering figure in and outside his family. Uddhav was the photographer's son. He was seen as a recluse, very shy, introverted. You would barely recognize him if you saw him in a room. Grandson Aditya too was seen as someone who was educated in English-speaking schools, much more liberal background, St. Xavier's, Bombay Scottish. How would he fit in with the Shiv Sena's son of the soil, regional chauvinistic image as the party of the Marathi Manus? So there were question marks over Uddhav and Aditya when they entered politics. But I think the last year in Maharashtra has provided some clues. Now, we don't know how long this MVA government, Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi government, will actually last in the end. But what is very clear is the next generation Thackerays have actually managed to do what even Bala Sahib could not. Because as the government now completes 1 year in Maharashtra in office, the Thackerays or the Gen Next Thackerays have actually governed a state instead of simply remote controlling it, and governed it in what are tough and chaotic times. In a way, the shrill demagoguery of the past has been replaced by a steely determination in the present. So why is Uddhav Thackeray the accidental Chief Minister? Well, it's been reported that a year ago, when the Nationalist Congress Party President Sharad Pawar tried to carve out this 3-party government, he had to literally goad Uddhav Thackeray time and again. No, you have to become Chief Minister. Uddhav was reportedly very reluctant. Remember, he had no administrative experience. He was going to head a coalition where there were lots of senior, ambitious politicians, and it was difficult to see how he could survive, leave aside succeed. He had controversially broken ties with the Shiv Sena's long-standing ally, the BJP, and in a sense this made his anointment even more difficult. He was charted through turbulent waters at a time when he appeared completely unprepared for it. To be honest, the storms are still gathering in the Arabian Sea, but the man who was, many believe, would be swept away by the rising tide of the BJP has managed to stay afloat. Let's be clear. The mandate a year ago of the 2019 Maharashtra Assembly elections was for a BJP Shiv Sena government led by Devendra Fadnavis. The Sena decision, therefore, to break away was naturally seen by the BJP and Fadnavis as a great betrayal. What has followed, though, is this untrammeled desire for revenge, to somehow or the other bring down this MVA government at all costs. A low-level, high-decibel campaign in which every institution and individual has been misused in some form. Then whether it is a brazenly partisan governor, publicity-hungry actors, and television anchors who, well, like to make a lot of noise. All of them acting as political proxies, every attempt being made to destabilize this government. The classic example was the Sushant Singh Rajput case, where clearly there was an attempt made to use these law enforcement agencies as a handmaiden to fix political agendas, manufacture conspiracy theories with the aid of a pliant media, with the sole purpose of somehow or the other involving the Thackerays in a crime that never was. That these machinations have taken place in Maharashtra at a time when the state has been really at the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak, the maximum number of cases in Maharashtra, show how crude political games have no space really for public health concerns of the wider citizenry. Maharashtra has always prided itself as a socially progressive, economically viable state, not trapped in the feudal battles of caste-driven societies of the Hindi heartland or the personality clashes that we've seen down south. And yet in the last 12 months we witnessed almost a Bollywood soap opera where we've seen lots of twists and turns in India's commercial hub. In the latest act, you've got the Enforcement Directorate that wants to act against an aggressive Shiv Sena leader who was leading the charge against the government's critics. That in such a toxic atmosphere, the state administration has actually managed to get on with governance is an achievement in itself. Perhaps the biggest transformation has been in our accidental chief minister, in Uddhav Thackeray himself, where once he was accused, as I said, of being this invisible leader. He now is routinely on state television addressing people in a statesman-like manner as a hands-on leader, particularly on the COVID issue. He's still a very soft-spoken leader, and that leads to charges that he's excessively cautious, heavily dependent on the bureaucracy. But actually this understated manner may be his strength, because then you're able to take people along with you. You don't offend anyone in a coalition government of king-size egos. Uddhav does not have the dynamism clearly of a Devendra Fadnavis, who's a 24/7 politician, but it is clear that Uddhav Thackeray is not a pushover either. We've seen how he too has misused state power and the Mumbai police to take on his critics, who have pointed fingers at him, and in a way that shows that under that quiet demeanor is a very hard-nosed neta who is ready to give the odd counter punch. In fact, let me tell you, in a recent interview to the Shiv Sena mouthpiece Samna, this is what Uddhav Thackeray said. He warned his critics, "You have a family too, you must look in the mirror. You are not clean either. If I get after you, though that is not my tendency." This is perhaps the closest we've seen to Uddhav Thackeray's political career taking a leaf from his father Bal Thackeray's playbook of political tokshahi or rule of force, a bit of ruthlessness creeping in to the Uddhav Thackeray persona. None of this means that Uddhav Thackeray's political future is secure, or indeed that of the MVA government. Far from it. Sharad Pawar's NCP is riven in a way with internal power struggles, largely because I think nephew Ajit Pawar still has ambitions one day to become, if possible, chief minister of this government. It's only Mr. Pawar's stature that holds the NCP together, and he's not getting any younger. Remember, he turns 80 this week. Then you've got the Congress, a party which is drifting, leaderless, and perhaps the party which is the most vulnerable to poaching. The BJP hasn't given up a Madhya Pradesh style cash and carry operation if they can do it in Maharashtra, where of course it's a bigger prize, stakes are much higher, and therefore they hope that this Thackeray-led government will collapse in the next few months. Their ambition is very clear. They want to topple this government at the earliest opportunity. But perhaps in a way the key to our accidental chief minister, as I call Uddhav Thackeray, lies within the Sena itself. This is a party which was forged in the 1960s on sharp identity politics. First Maharashtrian Asmita, then the idea of Hindutva, and now it is having to force itself to change, to become a more inclusive party of governance. The glue of power holds the Sena together, but the question is, for how long? When an Aditya Thackeray, for example, who's been very impressive as a tourism and environment minister, speaks passionately about greening cities, you wonder where that fits in with the Sena's sort of lumpen elements of the past, who were used to a very different kind of vocabulary. When, interestingly, Uddhav Thackeray resisted the temptation to open up temples and places of worship during the COVID pandemic, he was attacked, and questions were raised whether he could defy Hindu sentiment by appealing to common sense. Let's be clear again, a tiger doesn't change its stripes overnight, and the Sena's blood-stained history remains an intrinsic part of the Bal Thackeray legacy. But if the Gen Next Thackerays can in some way show that the Sena is a party that can now evolve, be governed by consensus, not by conflict, take along not just its traditional urban Mumbai vote, but also reach out to the farmers of Maharashtra, widen thereby its base across the state, who knows, the Shiv Sena in the 21st century may actually evolve into a regional party of substance where the Jai Maharashtra slogan resonates more effectively. My postscript. Like Uddhav Thackeray, there's another accidental chief minister in Odisha's Naveen Patnaik. He too carries a formidable family inheritance as Biju Patnaik's son. And when he first took office, he too had no real administrative experience. He couldn't even speak Odia properly. He was seen to be very much part of the Lutyens elite, disconnected with the people of Odisha. Yet remarkably, 2 decades later, he hasn't lost an election and he continues to remain Odisha's chief minister. In a way, I guess the silent image of a privileged dynast was taken by some mistakenly as a sign of weakness. Maybe then, whether it's with a Naveen Patnaik or possibly now with an Uddhav Thackeray, there is some space in Indian politics for leaders who don't have to flex their muscles to show their strength or raise their voice to be heard. Think about it. That was the Straight Bat.